total of 34 sections.
Relax.
We are live. This is the Senate Transportation Committee. It's Thursday, February 15th, the day after Valentine's Day. And we are going to talk, all days relate around Valentine's. We are going to talk about our miscellaneous D&B bill a little bit and some other things with our ledge council.
Best ledge council.
Are the best ledge council we've ever had today.
Today.
Okay, Cynthia, what did we ask you to come in and talk about?
Okay, so I have a 3-line amendment to talk about. It's posted to your committee page. So the language that you included in S309 dealing with whether or not, do you want me to put it
What
up on the
section?
screen?
Yeah.
It is dealing with section 19.
19.
And I can give you what page that's on.
Emergency warning lamps.
Yep.
And
So at present, so under the law as it currently is, you do not get to have the blue lights, the red lights, the siren, unless you get a permit from the DMV. And the DMV came in and said, I'm paraphrasing here, like, this is a lot of paperwork to be putting like lights and stuff on a very obviously labeled, you know, City of Montpelier police on the side of it. We don't think we should need to give them permits, and you agreed.
law enforcement.
Law enforcement, it's a government-owned law enforcement vehicle, and then it listed out like the government, so like federal, state, local. Skipped over, because so little is done in the state on a county level, county-owned vehicles, and the sheriff's department's vehicles are county-owned. So this would be adding, in that one subdivision, a county following a municipality to say that if it is a county-owned law enforcement vehicle, it does not need to apply to the DMV to get the siren and the lights
I think
permits.
you had a copy.
Yes, I did. I did.
And it's not adding county to the emergency services vehicles, because in asking around, it doesn't seem like there would be any iteration where a county would be owning like an ambulance. There are some instances where municipalities combine together and they'll have like their own fire services vehicles, but in that case, they are basically their own municipality, and it would fall under the definition of municipality. So I do not think, based on my knowledge of county government and the types of vehicles that could be owned at a county level, you are excluding anything that might want to have a light in a obviously government-owned labeled vehicle that would otherwise be eligible for a siren or a light now.
Okay, so you're
I just wondered if we wanted to list all members here instead of just me.
sure.
I can make that change, and then I'll send it to you and you can give it
Ross,
to
you okay with that?
I'm good.
So we'll have all 4 of us on there.
Senator Mouse is not on today.
No, he isn't put this one. He called me. He wanted me to know that he was still kicking and he was paying attention.
The other thing I can talk about is the email that you got about car seats.
Yes.
Would that help? Okay, I'm gonna open up just so I can see the notes that I had sent Senator Chittenden about this. But I think the concern that Lieutenant Fortin is trying to address is, do you remember when he brought in that car seat, and it's sort of what you would call like colloquially a bucket car seat? It's got a handle, so you can like clip it in bases in different car seats. That car seat is for like the smallest of infants, and it can only be rear facing. You couldn't have that be a forward facing car seat. But the one he held up, the one that you can get for free from the Department of Health, that has a lower end of the range in terms of weight and height limitations. So you could get to a point where you are exceeding the weight and height limits for that rear facing only car seat before you hit 2 years old. And he's concerned that a parent is then, not going to switch to what's known as a convertible car seat. And a convertible car seat is a car seat that can be rear facing 5-point harness, forward facing 5-point harness, booster seat with like your car seat belt. So
That's the convertible.
that's the convertible. There's also what's known as a combination car seat. And a combination car seat is only forward-facing 5-point harness or forward-facing seat belt. Under the Code of Federal Regulations, it defines rear-facing with the obvious definition of you're like going in the opposite direction that the car is moving, but it doesn't define convertible or combination. So I think if you put into the law what he said, which was or add or convertible, you would need to define what a convertible car seat is. And you also could run the risk that if you don't define what or convertible is, someone might think it's combination. They're very similar, and it is convertible because you're converting from forward-facing harness to forward-facing seatbelt booster seat style. I also think that based on the charts that he had provided for the limitations for the rear-facing only and the convertible, and then I pulled the ones for combination car seats, you could not, there's a gap between rear-facing only and forward-facing combination car seats. So I do not think you could ever have a child that exceeded the lowest of the range for the rear-facing only, but was large enough to then be in a forward-facing only car seat. So I do not think you could have a situation where if a parent was or guardian was following the manufacturer specifications, that they would go from the rear-facing only to the forward-facing only for one of the rear-facing seats that has a very low limitation. However, I think if your goal is to say, parent, guardian, adult who is looking after this small person, do not have them be in a forward-facing only seat until they're over the age of 2, you should say that. Say, and there's a number of listed things like, if you're under the age of 13, you shouldn't be in the front seat. If you have to be in the front seat in a rear-facing car seat, the seat belts, the airbags need to be deactivated. Say there, and you shall not be in a car seat that is incapable of being used rear-facing until you are over the age of 2, which would force someone to go from, in that first 2 years, rear-facing only to convertible, or just starting in the convertible car seat in rear-facing mode. I'm also going to say that in the second section that you have on car seats in the bill, it talks about the public outreach campaign and the work that the Department of Health needs to do with the Safe in the Seat website that they maintain. It already has this on it, the language that basically aligns with the 2018 AAP policy document saying, go from rear facing to convertible. They have really high weight and height limitations. So I think doing the suggestion that Lieutenant Fortin suggested doesn't help. I think it's confusing and could create problems. If you want to address what I think is the underlying problem of do not go from rear facing only to forward facing only, so bypass that convertible seat within the first 2 years of life, say it. And at the end of the day, the outreach campaign is already disseminating that information. So parents should be getting it
So
through.
does that mean we need another amendment?
I think if you want to,
I thought we were already saying that about the 2-year-olds.
I think you are, because you're saying they need to be rear facing. And I think that it would be just addressing the possibility that the adult is not paying attention and thinks, oh, I can switch to this forward-facing only seat because my kid is larger than the bucket seat. I do not think if they did that, it would be permitted under the law. But if you want to be sort of extra specific to address this one potential lapse in judgment confusion on the part of a parent, I think you could add one more paragraph. When the parents go to read
statute, when they're getting their child.
And that's a really good point. They're probably going to go to the website that exists to give them information about car seats before they go to statute.
Off their shelf and before we get in the car today, let's check.
So
Title.
all of that leads to we don't think we need to change the language.
I don't think you need to change the language because of the definition of rear facing that's in the Code of Federal
So
Regulations.
who's gonna do that? Are we anticipating?
Yeah, who's the poor
amendment?
SOB is gonna do that one?
Well, first of all, do you think that we're gonna get an
Read those
amendment?
online.
I don't think you're gonna get an amendment.
No.
So-
I think
but
you were on the
whoever presents
receiving
that
end of an
section
email.
Can make that statement.
Yeah, and what's his name, Sergeant, when he.
Lieutenant.
Lieutenant, when he testifies in the House, which is, he can maybe bring it up and they can maybe
Make the case there.
make it.
And if whoever is talking about that section is someone other than Senator Chittenden, then I can send all that information that I just rambled at you.
It has that section.
I have car seats right.
Okay, so then everything I just said is also in that email I sent to you a few days ago.
Fine if somebody else wanted.
So,
No,
give
you $10 keep it.
so who starts out?
So, we talked a little about this, so the first three sections. But should I start out by saying anything overall, or do you just want to start from the beginning? Because I think I'm the report of the bill, so
I think you should start it out and record the bill and
So-
then hand it over.
Yeah, so I will do an intro,
Jane, we've kept you out of it. Yes.
and then
After
Russ.
last Thursday, I've done mine for a
Yeah.
while.
So I'm gonna,
Russ is gonna do the first three sections. I'll do an intro, hand it over to Senator Ingles for 3 sections. And then section 4 through 9 and 10, 11, 12, 13 tinted windows, which are 416. I'll do those.
Okay. I can't even-
And that 10 and 11 is just about that issue that DMV had with registrations, like at that Dummerston.
I'm doing the finance report, which is speaking to it as well.
The
So
registration
Russ is
part.
doing,
Oh, you're talking about the
1, 2, and
return
3.
of,
and
so
then Andy's doing,
I'm doing 10, I'm doing sections
Four.
4
Yeah.
all the way to 16.
and 10 and 11 is dealing with under current law, you need to register your vehicle within a certain amount of time after moving to the state. But there was nothing that addressed people who are in the state for an extended but not indefinite period of time, like maybe they're working here, and saying that they can register their vehicles.
Wasn't there a problem that we were trying to fix about people coming over the border and just registering their cars in Vermont, but then
that was the
really.
titling, wasn't it?
I was not aware of the impetus being like a specific situation, but it does say,
That was the titling.
Maybe that's the title.
It was the titling that we were trying to fix.
You're right, not registering.
so for temporary residents, it says that you need to, be here. The temporary resident means an individual living in the state for a particular purpose involving a defined period, provided that the motor vehicle will be used in the state on a regular basis. So not saying if you are like
You
temporarily,
could be a seasonal resident, but you could have a car registered here that you use when you come.
yes. So if you normally live in Florida, but you decide to be a reverse migratory person and you come to Vermont to ski, you could keep your, vehicle here
It
at your
just
ski
makes it a lot
condo.
clearer that that's allowed, because
Yes.
people were kind of doing it.
I think
anyway.
people were doing it.
Okay, so I'm doing 4 through 16, and then we go to
Russ did,
Senator Chittenden.
I was gonna say, you've got to have 17.
Is it vessels? Yes, no,
Tom,
TC's got that.
I'm gonna do the emergency warning lamps. I'm gonna do child restraint systems.
Since you're doing emergency warning lamps, do you want to be listed first in the amendment? Or do you want to go in straight alphabetical order, or do you want to have Senator Pritchett first?
I do not have a preference.
If you go in alphabetical order, you happen to be listed first, and you are the person who is presenting the section that the amendment relates
That
to.
makes sense, let's do it
Okay,
that
go
way,
ahead.
and then.
What'd you say? Did we change somebody?
Oh,
No,
the
you
amendment,
can-
I'm just gonna have you be alphabetically so that,
It'll be at the end.
Yeah.
After we.
I can say that there will be an amendment coming on this.
Yeah.
that you'll be speaking to, and then you don't have to, say to, the Senate Secretary's office that someone else is speaking to it, even though they're not listed first.
So I'm doing child restraint systems. It's gonna be a mess. I'm gonna do exempt vehicle title. A mess, so Jody. Exempt vehicle title, which I need to read up on, and then I'm passing it over to Russ for section 31.
Yep, vessels on fire extinguishers.
Vessels on fire extinguishers or fire extinguishers on
Both.
vessels?
What about 32 on?
We're gonna jump around.
32 is myself.
That's still
And
votes.
then I'm gonna take masking. Where
And convictions for CDL and,
That's the Mexican
That's
piece.
the next, that's
who's doing that?
Senator Chittenden.
TC,
Would
Yeah.
you
and
use lots of
airbags,
questions
who's
on-
airbags?
I'm gonna do
The
airbags.
big airbags doing the airbags.
Yeah, they're gonna say, I'm passing it over to the Senate's biggest airbag.
And Senate Judiciary took testimony on airbags yesterday. I don't know if they filled you in, but they were supportive.
Yeah, I did talk to Senator Sears, so they didn't have any, although he said his only concern was the exemption for law enforcement. But he didn't really explain exactly why.
I said, very similar to what was said to your committee, and then it was followed up by the Alliance and the expert from Honda. This is language that's been included at the request of law enforcement in some states, and I continue to think it has something to do with the bars and the needing to deactivate
Right.
the sensors there.
And I think either Sheriff Anderson or that lieutenant, Hamilton, or whatever his name was, agreed with it. They were in the room when we talked about it. Okay, and so I'll finish that and I'll do the witness list, which Megan's gonna give us a slightly updated one, and the vote was unanimous, and then I'll pass it on for the amendment. Or we'll vote on it, and then the presiding officer will call on you.
And one thing just to remember is, so there's the bill is introduced, but then you got it recommitted, and then you have your strike all amendment. So I think you don't want to ever speak to the underlying bill. I think you just want to speak to your strike all amendment.
500.
I think both of them are 500.
Do you have other things this morning, or can I ask a question about masking?
You can ask a question about that.
Are you doing that section?
I am. So my understanding is if they have a CDL and an incident occurs, we are obligated to report it. My next question is if they choose to surrender their CDL, would that allow them to then be able to have their conviction masked?
Masked.
They just don't want to have
I
to
would think that would,
foreclose that option and want to be able to mask or go into a diversion program. Do we as a state need to consider such a scenario? Because I could see that as being.
well, then, if they don't want a CDL, wouldn't that just nullify
So this is only-
allow them asking?
My understanding is, in diving into this, which I had the most concerns about, this only applies if they have a CDL. So if they don't have a CDL and they do something, they go into the diversion program and nobody cares. But if they have a CDL and they get caught with a bunch of drugs, they have to report it. And then my question is because they have a CDL, am I wrong?
I'm sorry, they have a bunch of drugs. Like, are they driving under the influence or?
So as I'm looking at this and National Traffic Law Center, it says prosecutors and judges should be aware that some crimes other than traditional traffic offenses, drug trafficking, any felony committed in any type of vehicle carry mandatory CDL disqualification and must be reported, other than traditional traffic offenses. So if they get caught with a bunch of drugs,
Okay, I see where you're
does
going.
that make sense?
Yeah, so I think under this language, it says, in accordance with the federal law, no court, state attorney, or law enforcement officer may mask or allow an individual to enter into a diversion program that would prevent a commercial learner's permit holders or commercial driver's license holders conviction for any violation. So I think the timing is important. If they are arrested for having a lot of drugs, and then they choose to surrender their CDL or CLP at the point where you would be getting to the applicability of the statute, they are no longer a CDL holder or a CLP holder.
So they, in your mind, I can say confidently that they could have if this was inquired of beyond the floor, they could surrender their CDL and then go towards the diversion programs or any options that they might otherwise have.
Right, but I also don't know if diversion programs and expungement and any sort of sealing is being offered for things like I had a lot of drugs in my vehicle. I would encourage maybe speaking to someone on your judiciary committee or one of the judiciary attorneys. I just don't know enough about what is being sealed or expunged. My understanding is it's usually low level stuff, the things that we don't want affecting someone's ability to.
So if she doesn't know a lot about it, I don't know a lot about it. So what do you want to do?
We could ask judiciary to look at that language in addition and not take it up tomorrow.
But all we're doing is
All you are doing is following the federal law.
To tell you what, if they ask me on it, I'm gonna say, I'll get you the answer for third reading.
But you can say this is really the federal law that we are, that,
So part of the reason why I stuck in accordance with the Code of Federal Regulations was because I didn't like that it, has no definition for masking. Everything after in accordance with down is basically just copying verbatim what 49 CFR says. So this is one of those things in state law that I think the DMV is being told by their contacts with the federal government, you need to follow federal law, and the DMV is saying, we are following federal law, and they're saying, well, put it in your statute. So I don't think this paragraph changes anything about what Vermont is currently allowed to do. It's just putting in statute a federal law that already applies. And someone else is nodding behind you, so at least I'm not totally.
Mr. Coda, do you have a comment on that?
Joe Arduca, Matt Coda on behalf of lots of clients that have CDLs. Joe Arduca, who works over there, or used to before the floods with the U.S. Department of Transportation, runs our federal highway. The CDL is a federal license. If you have a CDL, you are drug tested randomly. If you're not in a drug tested program, you lose it. If you don't have to be intoxicated. If you are randomly selected and tested and you have alcohol on your breath when you're on duty, or that you had drugs in your system, maybe you smoked about 30 days prior, you lose your license. There is no surrender. It is taken from you and you cannot drive.
Permanent, ever again?
No. Then you can go to a drug diversion program and you can then test clean and then get your CDL back. But, or you can give it up and not drive again.
so in essence, this law is being applied by someone at DMV who understands all the federal rules.
Right. In fact, the CDL, when we try to make tweaks that we think will encourage more people to get a commercial driver's license, we are told correctly, this is a federal program and we must comply with federal law.
So I guess that's the thing that's really, it's a federal program, and I didn't know that we had someone.
It says Vermont on our license, but the federal government dictates what we can and can't do, when we can drive, how long we can drive, whether or not we can have
Number of hours, right?
number of hours, drugs and alcohol testing protocol.
So for purposes of this section, so it says in accordance with.
It's a federal law and we have to
But, so
comply.
this is what 384.226 says, and you can see that there's just some light plagiarism of the Code of Federal Regulations happening, where basically copying what the federal law is.
Who would be the pledge council on such an issue?
I think Bryn Hare used to do expungement and sealing, and then I think Eric was doing it, but it could be Ben. I feel pretty confident that it's not Michelle, so I'm gonna say either Ben or Eric.
So where I'm struggling with is this is applicable to people that hold a CDL. So prior to them getting a CDL, if they have any type of the offenses, the applicable offenses, they can go through their diversion programs, who knows, mask it, and it's blocked and so on. And that's not our concern. And then while they're holding the CDL, they might have less diversion options available to them. But I think what I also heard, and I can comfortably say, that should they surrender their CDL, then that, as far as we understand, would allow those pathways to have that offense masked, dissolved, ignored, whatever the right words
Yeah.
are.
As I read the CFR, it's applying to the holder of a CLP or a CDL. If they are not the holder of that credential, I don't think this would apply to them.
It's to prevent, remember there was that horrific accident a few years ago where the CDL driver ran into a whole group of motorcyclists? And he had actually had his CDL pulled in another state in Massachusetts, but he was driving in New Hampshire and he plowed into.
The motorcycles up in
Notch. When
It
it
was
was
in New
Notch.
Hampshire.
Dixville, Notch.
Dixville, yeah.
Yeah. But so I think now they're trying to make sure everybody's following this law and not masking somebody.
Do you want this CFR piece printed if anyone says, where did this language come from?
Sure.
Am I good if I send it to you? Can you print it?
I
I'm gonna look
suspect
at
you're
that
not
Dixville
gonna.
notch example too. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't.
And I can't remember how
like the school.
I remember that, I remember he had, I think he had his CDL revoked or something, I can't remember if he was just driving illegally, so that, you know, or somehow it was I don't know if there was a masking issue when it comes to law.
I think he actually should.
We randomly tested everything.
Trial, that's very funny about it.
You got an email on it, it was like,
Yeah, I don't know how he did or whatever, because I would say,
on school bus drive.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah,
reading.
but I remember there, I was concerned about how does this guy drive when
exactly.
July 2020.
sounds about right.
All right, I'm feeling better, and I'll get the answer for the third reading. We will no longer have the TIF.
Most people are not gonna challenge you when you say that we're just having to adhere to federal law.
It's just judicial.
Federal
law enforcement.
supremacy, it's federal supremacy,
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about here.
There's passion, some members of the judiciary.
You'll find some people on the judiciary committee will like speed them.
Yeah.
Are you passing over it today, or are
We're
you?
gonna pass it over today.
Okay, so second reading will be tomorrow, because I was gonna say,
Senator
second reading was today, I will be here.
Senator Chipman really wants to talk about this.
But he'll be here tomorrow.
Oh, they're gonna pass over today?
Yeah, we're gonna do it tomorrow.
I wasn't, we're not ready.
I feel
wasn't
better,
ready for my
thank you,
sections.
I feel better about tomorrow.
Yeah. And, cause I wasn't sure,
Let's give them.
we probably
We
could,
saw how that worked.
we probably could do it today, but I thought we still have NPO one more day.
Yeah, okay, all right.
I wasn't sure if judiciary was done with it till the end of the day.
Friday's a good day to do it.
Unless it's controversial, and then you do not wanna hold third reading over the weekend.
That's what we're doing right now.
Yeah,
But I don't think this is a highly controversial issue.
I didn't think the last year's was gonna be either. Look at my face.
Really, on
What
what?
was it?
Two
Oh,
things, towing and Ruth Hardy said that section was unconstitutional, and then we held it for 5 days. It was just a back and forth between, I'm on YouTube.
Oh, that's, okay, thanks for the history.
Yeah.
Memories, I
what
forget.
happened again?
Maybe.
The fire extinguisher on vessels.
Yeah, that's gonna
Controversial, you never
be the highly controversial one. Yes.
Are we finished now?
Anthony, did we have anything else? I thought there was one other thing at one point.
The only thing that I have that I can talk to you about, this would not be a short conversation, is the draft of the strike law for S-184 for traffic cameras.
Yeah, and did we don't have you on the schedule to do that for you.
No, but if you wanted to add me to your schedule for tomorrow,
Do we
great.
have time on our schedule
I'm sure you can make time.
tomorrow?
I think what you have is you're hearing from the person from Delaware. I think you have driver education, it's not driver's education, it's driver's license, but it's driver education. And I think you had clean car stuff, and then I think you were hearing from someone from Delaware on traffic cameras.
Is that person? confirmed?
No,
So we're not,
we can take that person off.
we haven't heard from them.
Correct.
If that person, so we can do it tomorrow at 10.
Sure.
If you can do it tomorrow at 10.
And we were on the floor at 10:15 for our instructions on
Oh, yeah. I
protocol.
forgot.
Is that?
Yeah. Okay, so we can adjourn for today.
go offline?